There is just one final piece to the puzzle for Kansas State Wildcat head coach Chris Kleiman, and that is reaching the college football playoff. He's done pretty much everything else with this Kansas State program, including leading them to a Big 12 conference title just a couple of seasons ago. Entering 2024, they're going to be one of the best teams in another new-look Big 12 conference, and with the expanded playoff field, will the Wildcats be able to reach the field of 12 teams in 2024? Well, you're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel, and welcome back to prediction season. That's where I'm predicting all 134 FBS-level college football teams. That's what I'm doing this summer, which means you should watch, obviously, because I'm doing your favorite team. So hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when that video gets uploaded. Thank you for watching this video. It helps support my channel in more ways than you can even imagine. And if you want to continue to support what I do here on YouTube, please like, comment, share, watch my other videos, and anything else you do to interact with the channel helps support it. So I appreciate all the love and support that you guys give to these videos. Prediction season has gone really well so far, and we're only, I don't even think, a quarter of the way through quite yet, but we're getting there. Kansas State is up next, and how do we do predictions in 2024? Well, we're going to go ahead and take a deep dive into the team's offense, into the defense, and at the end of the day, we'll give the Kansas State football schedule a good old game-by-game preview and prediction. I do have a couple more footnotes before we begin, because right over here are going to be the stats that both the team's offense and defense put up last year, depending on the respective the slide that you're on. And then for your viewing pleasure, of course, right below the team's logo, I have put the team's coaching staff again. That's both offensively and defensively. So let's start out with the Kansas State offense. Very balanced offensive attack last season. Could very well be that way as well, but they did lose some guys that helped this offense be so successful in 2024. Again, almost 450 yards per game is really, really good. 37 points per game, really, really good. The quarterback that led that to happen, though, last season was Will Howard, and he is going to be gone. Had 2,643 yards with 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. On the ground, did contribute 351 yards and 9 touchdowns as well. He's probably going to end up going to be the starting quarterback for Ryan Day's squad in Columbus. And then you also do lose Jake Rubley, who threw 5 passes threw 1 pass for 5 yards last season. And he is off to Illinois State. So what does your quarterback room look like this year? Well, Avery Johnson is going to end up being that starting quarterback. He was able to lead the team to a win in the Pop-Tarts Bowl last year versus the NC State Wolfpack. Overall, last season had 479 yards and 5 touchdowns in the bowl game alone. 178 yards, 2 touchdowns on only 45% completion percentage. Definitely did not have the best bowl game. Overall, had around a 56% completion percentage. I think he possesses all the tools necessary to be a really good quarterback. Because, by the way, much like Will Howard, he is a dual threat guy. I think he's a little bit better of a dual threat guy, and that's not discrediting Will Howard. He is a pretty solid dual threat quarterback, but Avery Johnson contributed 296 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground last season, so his passing total didn't even double what he did on the ground, which usually ends up being the case for a lot of these quarterbacks. I think Avery Johnson's going to be a good player. You also do have Jacob Newth and Blake Barnett as a freshman coming into the quarterback room. Running backs, let's talk about them. Trayshawn Ward is going to be gone. The second leading rusher had 643 yards, 5 touchdowns last year, as well as Anthony Frias, my apologies, through the portal. DJ Giddens does come back. He was a 1,200-yard rusher last year with 10 rushing touchdowns. Joe Jackson will be back onto this team as well. Listed as a wide receiver last year, but is going to act like a running back in 2024. Dylan Edwards is a transfer coming over from Colorado, really talented player there. And then Devin Rice is a freshman entering this room. Wide receiver room does lose some pretty solid pieces as well. Your leading receiver among wide receiver in Phillip Brooks is gone. 589 yards, 5 touchdowns last season. RJ Garcia is entered his name into the transfer portal. He is now off playing for a different program. He is going over to Bowling Green. And then Ben Sinnott, your leading receiver last year from the tight end position, is gone to playing on Sundays as well. Christian Moore is another guy that enters through the portal, but it was Sinnott last year that helped to lead this passing attack, 676 yards and 6 touchdowns for the tight end last season. So your pass catching room looks like this. Jace Brooks, Keegan Johnson, and Jaden Jackson are all going to be coming back here for this team. And you do also get a couple transfers coming over. Dante Cevis Dante Cephas, my apologies, formerly of the Kent State Golden Flashes, most recently from Penn State. He comes over to give this team a nice boost. He can be a very talented weapon, as well as Quentin Rice. He is going to be coming over to this team as well, I believe, as a JUCO transfer. My apologies, I did get Joe Jackson mixed up with Jaden Jackson on the stat sheet that I do have in front of me, so I do apologize for that. But nonetheless, let's continue with this pass catching room. Garrett Oakley, Will Swanson, and Braden Lofton will all be coming back to this tight end room. Oakley was the leading receiver besides Sanaa among tight ends last year, 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. And with Cooper Beebe, KT Leviston, and Christian Duffy all off to the NFL from the offensive line, it'll be up to Carver Willis, Taylor Poitier, I don't know why I stuttered with that so much, I apologize, Hadley Panzer, Drew Leangang, again, apologies for any mispronunciations, John Pastor all return, and Easton Kitley is a player that comes over through the transfer portal from North Dakota. As a 4-star transfer and should see a starting role on this offensive line. Again, Avery Johnson has shown some really, really good flashes. Yes, it hasn't all been pretty with Avery Johnson at times. Yet, I think he has all the tools necessary to be a really good dual-threat quarterback for this offense. The rushing attack is still going to be good. You have DJ Giddens coming back, and you have Dylan Edwards coming in to try to fill that role of Trayshawn Ward this season. Didn't really live up to full expectations at Colorado, only about 350 rushing yards, but he's a very good player. Got a good wide receiver room that has some pretty good weapons coming in through the transfer portal, especially that in Dante Cephas. You also take a look at your tight end room, pretty solid. It's just filling in those gaps of the offensive line, and then is Avery Johnson going to be all of the hype that people have hyped him up to be? Those are the big question marks for the Kansas State offense, but nonetheless, while it may be tricky to reach the 37 points per game, 445 yards per game they did last year, I think there's definitely potential that they can do so. The defense last year overall was pretty good, definitely did see some struggles, but for the most part, had a pretty darn successful season and was a really, really good defense, especially on third downs. It does lose its fair share of talent as well, though, as Khalid Duke, the leader on the defensive line, or I should say one of the leaders on the defensive line last season, is gone. 19 tackles, 6 sacks off the edge last year. He is now playing on Sundays. Nate Matlack and Javon Banks are some depth piece players. Matlack was pretty productive coming off the edge last year, though, 15 tackles and 4 sacks, while Banks is also going to be leaving through the transfer portal. I believe more of a depth piece than anything within this room. So your defensive line is going to look like this. Your leading tackler among defensive linemen is coming back. That's Brendan Mott, had 28 of them. Otherwise, you have Cody Stufflebean, Uso Sayumalo, Damian Ilaleo, and Toby Osunsanmi. Again, apologies for any mispronunciations there, as well as Travis Bates coming over on the defensive line. He is coming over from Austin Peay. You also do lose some talent in this linebacker room, much like your defensive line room. Daniel Green is gone due to graduation. Pretty darn solid linebacker out of the room. Only 13 tackles last year, but still saw big playing minutes and did make some good plays here and there. While Jordan Perry is off through the transfer portal, again, more of a depth piece than anything. So you really keep much of your linebacker room intact. Austin Moore, second leading tackler last year, had 63 of them. He was actually tied for the team lead. Misread the stat sheet there a little bit. Tied for 63 with another player we'll mention here in a minute. 1.5 sacks for him last season as well. Desmond Purnell coming back, 51 tackles for him last season. You're also going to be getting Bo Palmer, Jake Clifton, and Austin Romaine coming back, as well as, hey, you get a boost to this linebacker room. Alec Marenko is coming in to the linebacker room. He is a New Mexico transfer that should see some solid playing time in the defensive front seven. Defensive backs don't lose a whole ton, but you do lose some pretty darn good names, as Will Lee III, who had 42 tackles, 6 pass defended, 2 interceptions from the cornerback position, and Jordan Wright are both going to be gone. Again, Jordan Wright, a little bit more of a depth piece, only had 7 tackles last year, but Will Lee is that big loss through the transfer portal. He is going to be going over to Texas A&M. Meanwhile, you do lose Kobe Savage to the portal out of your safety room. He is going over to Dan Lanning's squad in Eugene. fourth, or I should say tied for the third leading tackler on this team. There were 2 guys tied with 63 and 2 guys tied with 57. Those were your 4 leading tacklers last year. Savage was one of them. No passes defended, but did have 3 picks, which I guess you technically could consider passes defended as well. But there's the losses in your defensive back room. Still a really darn good secondary here for this team, at least talent-wise. It didn't necessarily perform the best all the time last year, but the talent is definitely here. Jacob Parrish, Keenan Garber, and Justice James will be your cornerbacks, among some other names you could list there as well. Marquise Sigil was one of the leading tacklers for the team last year, 63 of them, 9 passes defended, 1 pick. VJ Payne, Colby McAllister, and Jack Fabris, as well as some transfers coming in to the safety room as well to only boost what this safety room already has coming back. Yes, the Kobe Savage loss is big, but you do get Jordan Riley and Dante Thomas coming in here to this room. Thomas, I do believe, is a JUCO transfer, while Riley comes over from Ball State. And kickers are people too. Let's show them some love. Jack Blummer has gone to graduation, but you do get another punter back in Simon McCallahan, and Chris Tennant is back as the primary place kicker. When you talk about the Kansas State defense, yes, it definitely had its struggles last year. Overall, the numbers are pretty solid. And I just now realized that my math did not add up. So instead of 255 pass yards per game, it is 225 pass yards per game, which is absolutely a more respectable number. You still probably want to try to get that down, especially with all the talent you have coming back in the secondary. I think it will go down. But again, the pass defense saw their problems at times last year. The rush defense saw their problems at times last year. Find that good, consistent rhythm on a week-to-week basis. This Kansas State defense is going to be locked, loaded, and ready to go again here in 2024. I do want to take a look at something here because they did pick off 13 passes, recovered 10 fumbles, and had 25 sacks last year. Pretty solid numbers. They could definitely do that again this upcoming season. But now we got to take a look at the Kansas State schedule. Hey, any game at home is going to be underlined, while any game on the road is going to be in italics, guys. That is that slanted text. Any game you see in green is going to be a game that I think that the Wildcats are going to win easily. Any game in yellow is going to be a close win, very competitive game, but the Wildcats are still able to win. And then, of course, red is a loss. They will start out week 1 with an easy win against UT Martin before moving into what I think is going to end up proving to be a pretty tricky road game for this Kansas State team. The Tulane Green Wave, yes, did lose their head coach, Willie Fritz. Yes, they lost quarterback Michael Pratt. Yes, they lost a ton of other weapons to the NFL through the transfer portal, things like that. I think they got one of the home run hires in the coaching carousel that happened in John Summerall, and Tulane is going to be a very, very good team in 2024. I think they're going to be one of the better group of 5 teams. Will they make the college football playoff from that spot? Potentially. Again, Summerall is a really good coach, and I think Tulane's got a pretty solid roster over there. They did lose a lot of talent, and Kansas State has lost games like this before. I don't think it happens here. Would it surprise me if it does? A little bit, in all honesty, especially with Summerall's first year with all the talent that you did lose. Watch out for this one. I think this could be a pretty tricky road game for Kansas State, but I do have them going on the road and still being able to pull out that win. I think it's going to be a very close, very competitive game. The Wildcats will end up pulling away at the end. Avery Johnson, the offense, will make one too many plays. The Wildcats improve to 2-0. And I think that road game starts a string of very, very close games for this team. It wouldn't surprise me if they lost a game in this next 4-game stretch, but I don't have them losing one. Arizona is going to be a very, very tough team, and Kansas State absolutely could lose that game. Noah Fafita, Tay Tyroa McMillan, some really good talent on defense, comes back for the Wildcats in 2024. A new head coach in Brent Brennan. Love his energy. We'll see what he's made of. But having this game at home, I think, is a difference maker. And Kansas State has the secondary to be able to slow down McMillan, some of these other wide receivers, and get that passing game slowed. I don't know if Arizona has all the defensive pieces necessary to slow down a Kansas State run game. That's still going to be really good in 2024. So I got the Wildcats winning that one. On the road at BYU is always tough. Provo is a sneaky, underrated, really hard place to play, and the Cougars, I think, have a pretty solid roster. However, it's not a roster that I compare with Kansas State, and while BYU, if you remember from a previous Big 12 video, I do think they're going to end up winning a game or two that they're, quote, not supposed to. I don't see it being this one. I got the Kansas State Wildcats pulling off a close win on the road against the BYU Cougars. They will have their struggles, but they'll come out with the win. They get to come back home and play another team that definitely can contend for a Big 12 conference title. That's the Oklahoma State Cowboys, and I got them being able to win that one as well. Oklahoma State, a lot of their season hinges on Alan Bowman. Yes, Ollie Gordon comes back and he is fantastic. But if Bowman cannot stay healthy, that is the big thing for not if Bowman doesn't stay healthy. My apologies. I'm thinking of a different name, but touchdown to interception ratio has been big for him. He's got to improve on that if he wants to have Oklahoma State see a huge level of success in 2024. I think he can do that. But again, I really like these Kansas State defensive pieces, like their offensive pieces. Oklahoma State's defense kind of struggled last year, although I think it gets better. I still see the Wildcats being able to pull out that win. And then you have your bye week, which in my opinion is a perfect place for a bye week. You're coming off a 4-game stretch in which, again, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Wildcats lose a game in there. That's just not what I'm personally predicting for this video, but I think all that wear and tear is going to catch up with them eventually. Yes, they get an extra week to prepare and get ready, and Colorado's a team that yet again is trying to build through the transfer portal. There are a lot of solid pieces on this Colorado team, and I think they win one game this year that they're going to be probably big underdogs in. That's the word that I was looking for. Don't know why I couldn't think about it. Colorado has enough talent to win a big game like this. Now, I know after last season, a lot of people may be holding back on Deion Sanders and the squad a little bit. They still have Shedeur Sanders. They still have Travis Hunter. I think they get one big win. Having this game at home helps, and I think Colorado's going to catch Kansas State lacking here. I do have Kansas State losing that game, more of an upset pick than anything, because I also do have Kansas State going on the road and losing to West Virginia the very next week, which I definitely think is more likely than that road loss to the Colorado Buffaloes. But again, college football's not always likely, so I have them losing back-to-back road games here. West Virginia is going to be a talented team. Garrett Green has a load of weapons around him. Neil Brown not only saved his job last year, he's giving Morgantown a lot to be hopeful for and a lot to be excited about in 2024. West Virginia is going to be really good, led by their quarterback Green. I got this one as a road loss for the Kansas State Wildcats, but then they get to come back home and play a game in a rivalry that they've dominated since it seems like the beginning of time. Even though Kansas is going to be a much, much improved team in 2024, as they have been in the past couple of years, this is especially going to be true. And the reason I say they'll be much improved from last year is not that Jason Bean was bad. Jason Bean was pretty good, but Jalen Daniels is just a dynamic playmaker. He's a more dynamic playmaker, more of a leader, really, really good player. If he stays healthy, Kansas is dangerous. The defense does see some turnover, but year after year, they seem to just get a little bit better, but I don't think the defense is going to be where it needs to be to knock off the Kansas State Wildcats and end this horrendous losing streak to their team in the state of Kansas. Was trying to think of the state nickname and it has slipped my mind. Kansas State has dominated this rivalry. I foolishly, Kansas State fans would add, picked Kansas to win last year, not making that same mistake again. They got to prove it to me first. The Jayhawks will be good, but the Wildcats pulled out that win. And then it starts off a string of what I think are going to be pretty easy wins for the Kansas State Wildcats. Willie Fritz's first year at Houston may very well see an upset win, and I could definitely see this as a point where Willie Fritz and the Houston Cougars get hot, and they pull off a college football stunner here in their home stadium. I think it's going to need a year or two to figure things out. I think the talent level at Houston has to develop first, and I like this Kansas State team a lot. So I got the Wildcats going on the road, pulling out a pretty good win there. After their second and final bye week of the season, they will be able to beat the Arizona State Sun Devils, who, even though I think Dillingham squad is an improved team entering the Big 12, I don't think they're going to be that great. And then Cincinnati, kind of the same situation there. Scott Satterfield's group, I think, is going to get better, but I still don't think they're where they need to be to compete with Kansas State. And then final game of the year on the road against Iowa State, the blizzard game from last season. Who knows if we're going to get a blizzard this year. Iowa State was able to beat Kansas State on the road last year, and Iowa State's going to be a much better team record-wise at the end of the season. I'm telling you, Iowa State's got a lot of great returning talent, offensively, defensively. Matt Campbell's put together some really good teams during his seasons in Ames, and I think Iowa State's going to be able to pull off this win, which sends the Wildcats down to 9-3. Again, the Big 12 is so competitive and so tough to predict. By the way, that Arizona game is not a Big 12 conference game. It doesn't count for their conference record because they scheduled it before Arizona joined the Big 12 Conference. 9-3 is what I got. 3 road losses. Let me know what you think will happen with the Wildcats down in the comment section below. And we're going to do the Iowa Hawkeyes up next. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.